Doc is back, baby.
Ooh.
I'm running off zero sleep. Very little sleep, I should say. But we're back, baby. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all ages, Geeks Worldwide Radio and the Dork Shared Gooniverse proudly present to you the greatest podcasting team in the world. He's the Fry Guy, Nick Friar. I'm the Backcracker, Dr. Joe. Together, we are TLDR Comic Book Club, baby! Nicholas, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Joe, because every time you do that and you're like, I'm not feeling great or like tired in this case, somehow you're like, your body just gets possessed once you go and do the intro. And it's absolutely outstanding. And if that's not enough reason to subscribe to one of our audio channels, I don't know what is. You know what? Maybe the fact that we go and have amazing creators on our show, the best that the business has to offer. Maybe because we talk about a lot of kick-ass books on the show, which we're going to do today because we do have a mainline episode planned for you. But if you're catching us on Doc's Twitch stream, on our YouTube channel, TLDR Comic Book Club over there as well, or just on Twitter, scrolling around and seeing us there, go find us on one of our audio channels because maybe it's a little bit easier for you to listen there. I know I'm having to make a commute, so I listen to my podcast there. When I'm making my 1.5 hour commute into the city now from New Hampshire, which I love. Or, if you want to hear our interviews, that's the only place you're going to hear it is on any one of our audio channels. It's Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Geeks Worldwide Radio, SoundCloud, all the major platforms. You're going to find us there. Make sure you subscribe to the show and then leave a 5-star review. If Joe sees anything fewer than a 5-star review, he's going to figure out who the hell you are. And he's going to come to your house and it's not going to go over well because it's what he's at least told me off air. But I am ready to go, Joe, today and do a mainline episode, mix things up because we were talking about not this month, but the following month. And it looks like we got to get the mainline episodes in while we can right now.
Yeah, it's been so long since we've done a mainline episode that my background, I'm so used to just doing solicits and shit that my mainline background isn't about the book that I'm talking about today. It is about just a kick-ass cover I found. I've now, for those watching, have changed it so it is fitting. Nice. It looks like you have done the same because you've got, just a generic background as well.
Well, I have your image that I like when you tweet out the books that we're talking about. I like to use that background now because it's a lot easier for me. It's one less thing that I have to go and put together.
Lazy.
But yeah, I have the TLDR logo, and then I have yours, unfortunately, because you always put your book on the top because you're that kind of guy, always putting yourself first. But yeah, whatever.
Yeah, well, because A, B, C, D, E, F, Doc comes before F.
Right, because Doc is your first name, of course.
It is.
Right, of course. But yes, because who knows? Like we may, you never know when the Woodward and Bernstein boys are going to be, going to have something cooking for you guys.
Yeah, I know this fucking papers popped.
I know that people call Mac and Goo the press pass boys because they get that early movie access, but I mean. I feel like, we're not press pass boys because we're the sleuths. We're the one that are digging around and getting all the good stuff. And
we get our fair share of press passes.
This is true. We do too. We do. We get.
Yeah.
I mean, we get a ton of. We do get a ton of press access for our reviews and stuff like that. And I actually did write a review this week that I'll be talking about that book a little bit later on in the show when we get to what's new. But first, we got to get to catching up. Which actually, very rare occasion, you don't have anything to offer today, do you?
No, because I was. I was not as debaucherous as some this past weekend, but we were in Myrtle Beach. No. We're not naming names. That's what stays in what happens in Myrtle Beach stays in Myrtle Beach. But
don't want to get you in trouble again today. Good Lord. Doc was catching strays in the DSG chat today. My word. Oof.
But we had a good time. There was a fair number of the DSG boys in Myrtle Beach to celebrate our boy Big Bruh getting married. It was his bachelor party weekend. We, shout out to Bruh. We had a good time. It was a fun time. I will say this: 10 guys. It can be hard to corral that many people, but I gotta say, no fights broke out. Only one person vomited, and that was the first night.
Only one.
Only one. Insane. The house was in good shape when we left. We got an email from the owner saying how pleased they were about the condition of the house. So no property was destroyed. To me, that is a wildly successful weekend. So
That's a very successful weekend. That
Yeah. Well,
because
you,
I'm
you
thinking,
had you had Den Mother, Papa Doc,
yeah,
making sure everyone stayed in line. But
mm,
we had a good time. So I didn't really get a chance to do any reading. I did some. I was able to do some prep for something that we've got cooking coming up later, and
yep.
I was able to to do reading for today's show. Which was great, and so I'm excited, Nicholas, because we failed to mention this is a very, very special episode of TLDR. The mainline issues have, come, few and far between lately.
Yes.
And we've been cooking up something special for the entire month of December, which won't see a mainline issue, I don't think. But today's issue, folks, issue 69. Nice.
Yes, and it's only
Nice.
and of course, I'm talking about Poison Ivy today. Very, very good timing on it, but
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Um, but, you
Nice.
bring up the, leaving the place in good shape. I'll tell you what, when I was the best man for my brother's, bachelor party, we also rented a place, and, by and large, everything went well, but there was a whole thing with, like, the firewood situation. We ended up owing, like, $200 worth of firewood by the end of
Oh
the weekend,
Jesus!
so
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is that they in the picture of the place is a pool and what looks like a hot tub, but it was not heated. It was a cold tub, right?
Oh,
So even though it was beautiful weather, it would have been nice to fire up the hot tub, get in there, and
sure.
rip some Crown and Cokes. But we most of the guys just kind of put their feet in there, just to kind of keep the tootsies cool. But uh, we
That's a
digress.
That's a much better complaint than what I walked out of because it was they had firewood for indoors and firewood for outdoors, and we used like indoor firewood for the outdoors, and it was just like we just blew
And
through all of it.
listen to how fucking bananas that statement is.
Thank
Indoor
you.
firewood for outdoors. Like, go fuck yourselves.
Also, couldn't wear shoes in the Airbnb as well. So that was I stayed on top
Oh,
of that. I knew that one. Also
I
had a
brought my
teepee
fucking.
out back. I didn't tell you that. It's a
Where
teepee
the
out back.
fuck did? Where the fuck did you guys have this bachelor party?
Have you ever seen Midsommar? It's
No,
right
I
there.
haven't.
Oh, yeah, it's fucked up, dude. You gotta watch that.
Jesus
You gotta
Christ.
watch that. But
No, I brought my UGG slippers, so I wouldn't be walking around in filth and
you
whatnot.
own
Because who
UGG
knows?
slippers?
Oh, I got many pair of UGG slippies, my friend. Gotta
Oh,
gotta treat your feet. Gotta treat your feet right. It's
I'm
like
more of a
walking on
Crocs guy.
clouds. Megan won't let me wear Crocs.
I wouldn't wear Crocs. Like you couldn't pay me
She
to wear
she
Crocs.
she said if you don't give up on life, you're not allowed to wear Crocs.
Oh, that sounds about right. I never understood that, but I did get a chance to catch up on a few things. Hulk issue 10, Rhodey issue 2, a book that I'm going to be talking about on the show. That's from Dark Horse a little bit later on. Deadpool issue 1, solid first issue. Punisher issue 7. Joe talked about that last week. Been a kick-ass title.
Oh, wasn't that
Daredevil.
good?
Yes, it was very, very well done. But of all the books that I caught up on, Canary was definitely the one that I was most excited about. I am reading Book of Evil too. I only got to read a few of the pages during my commute today. I had to finish off Canary, and Book of Evil Scott had told us it's going to be a little bit different than his normal work, so it absolutely is. Hopefully I can talk about that on the show at some point down the line. But Canary, first 3 issues have been absolutely outstanding. Some crazy developments in this third issue. Cannot wait. You said it before. This is one that you were upset that you were going to have to wait on, and it just over and over, like it could not be more right. This is an awesome book, but it'll be once you get your chance to sink your teeth into it, Joe, you're gonna be happy you don't have to wait month to month for it.
Nice.
All
Nice.
right.
Nice.
Let's get to what the comics that are actually coming out this week, though, not the back issues. So, why don't you start us off with what we got from Marvel?
All right, Marvel. Here we go. Title. Fucking.
Wow,
I
title vomit.
yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
That's what I
welcome.
want to say. Yeah. That's why we work. We finish each other's sentences. We
Sentences.
finish each other's sentences.
I
There we
got you.
go. Boom. Yeah, baby. The Amazing Spider-Man number 13, Moon Knight number 17, Venom number 13, The Avengers number 62, Wolverine 27, written by friend of the show, Benjamin Percy, Ghost Rider number 8, written by friend of the show, Benjamin Percy.
Damn straight.
Yes, kiddo. Okay,
Oh,
enjoy. I will be up in a little bit. Okay,
Where's
give me
my
swoosh.
My Little Pony review, Swaggins?
Love you, kiddo.
My Little Pony review. What the hell? We have to bring Mac on for it.
We do. Her and Mac will host TLDR. Spider-Man #2.
I bet you Mac would actually consider doing that for us. If we asked him, hey,
Yeah,
we want
yeah,
you to do
maybe.
5 minutes. You guys do the open, you and Swaggins.
Fantastic Four #1, Marauders #8, Legion of X #7, Captain America Sentinel of Liberty #6, Axe Judgment Day Omega #1, Star Wars The High Republic #2, X-Men Legends #4, a book I wanted to get to but didn't have a chance to this week, Sabretooth and the Exiles #1.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Damage Control #4, and then Black Panther Unconquered #1, which seems fitting with the movie coming out
Right,
this
of course.
week. But out of all of that, 2 books that we generally read, and unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to read either.
Yeah, I do want to check out Sabretooth. I'm behind, a little bit behind on Moon Knight, I think by a couple issues, but Sabretooth and the Exiles, our guy Ferg over at Geeks Worldwide is going to be reviewing that, it looks like, too. So I'm interested to hear what he has to say before giving that one a look. From DC, though, we got quite a few titles that we are interested in, 2 in particular for you, but we got Dark Crisis 6, Wonder Woman 793, Batman versus Robin issue 3, which you are reading, Batman Urban Legends 21, Batgirls 12. I am Batman 15. You are Batman 15. We are all Batman 15.
I'm so fucking confused. Batman, you or Batman, me?
The Golden Age #1, Superman, Son of Kal-El.
Oh, I read that,
17.
by the way. That was tremendous.
Oh, nice. Batman Inc. issue 2, which I do. I think. I don't know if I gave the first issue a look, but Ghostmaker's at the center of all that too, and I cannot remember whose cover I saw for the second issue of this. But there's it's all like it looks pretty badass, so I'm gonna give that one a look. Flash, Fastest Man Alive issue 3, Multiversity Teen Justice issue 6, and then Joe, we each have a DC book that we want to sink our teeth into a little bit more. Why don't you take it away?
So, Nice House on the Lake, issue 11. I think I talked about this last time when this book came out. I want to. This is, by and large, a tremendous series. It really is. The problem for me has been that it's been all over the map in terms of the spacing of the issues, right? I took a 4.5-month hiatus at one point between issue 6 and 7, but at least through issues 1 and 6, it was an issue a month. It was steady. It was boom. Then the break comes, then we get a couple issues, and then we get another, break, and then we get a couple issues. So like it's just taken a bit longer. And I know, Tyna's got a lot going on. And so what that does for someone who reads the floppies, who reads issues month to month, when there's that much of a, it's one thing if it's like, okay, you've it's the end of the third arc, and then like with Saga, for example, it was years between the
Agreed.
last book, right, and then it kept picking back up again. But at least that was like it ended on an arc. It was consistent. It ended, and then it just took forever to kind of come back again, right? So people at least had a chance to catch up and all of that. When there's delays going from issue to issue, it makes it tough. To because you kind of forget. Then you've got to go back and reread because you've read, if you're anything like us, you've read a ton of other books in between.
Yeah.
And so you have a tendency to, forget how good it is. You have a tendency to kind of get, at least I do, have a tendency to get a little cranky because you've got to wait longer than normal and then having to go back and reread. So it really, what it does is it just chops it up and fragments it, and it can make it a little. And I think I said last time, I was like, I think I might just wait until it's all done and then just start from the beginning and reread it. I
Mm.
read this issue. It was excellent. The biggest thing I have with this book is that there's a lot of dialogue, and in the issues where there's action and when things like move at a great pace, it's tremendous. But we've had a bit more issues now where it's, there hasn't been a lot of action. It's just been a lot of dialogue, and this issue had a lot of that. Had a lot of that dialogue, so the pace was slow, but I can't wait for the next issue. And then when it comes out, I'm 100% going to reread it start to finish again, because I think when one does that, you're going to read it and just be able to fly right through it and go, that was fucking excellent. And that's like the one hang up I'm having, is that it's just been so choppy.
It makes it harder for us to fight the good fight too, of like, talking about monthly comics. Like, hey, we both love trades, but like
Yeah.
we also appreciate the monthly floppies. They're important to the business and everything. But when you go and take these pauses and you run into these issues, like, hey, we get it. Like artists, like we're talking about art, and you may not think it's a physical job, but we hear all the time like how artists, like, you can run into like a tennis elbow kind of thing, you can run into back issues, all this different stuff can pop up. They can just get sick. Like you run into all these things, and it can throw a whole book off for a month, a couple. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
And it's difficult, but like this doesn't help when you're trying to, like, if you want to keep the floppies alive or the single issues alive, which to some extent I do, like, for the health of the business, I care about it immensely. But as a consumer, like, I like it for the covers. But if we were told, like, hey, you're not gonna learn about this title at all, and then you're just gonna get 6 issues right off the rip, we've had this conversation before, but things like this happening where you run into all these pauses, not ideal. Not great.
Yeah, it's less than ideal. And real quick, before we jump out of the book that you want to talk about, considering this is issue 69, nice. Shout out to Bert and the Dollhouse. Got you, brother. Got you, brother. Nice. Okay.
I'm just glad it's an actual person in the chat and not
not
the
a sex
bots.
bot. Yeah.
Yeah, she's getting a lot of those on Change My Mind. I wonder why. Blame that on West. But anyways, so for me, from DC this week, the one book that I want to talk about was Wildcats issue 1, which I know you were busy over the weekend and everything like that, but I was kind of surprised that you didn't give this one a look. Is it on your list, your short list of things you wanted to check out this week, or not really?
Yeah, I had, so that's the other thing too. Tuesdays are usually my day off. Violet's at school. I'm here, and I can, whatever books I don't read over the weekend or Monday night, I usually can finish up and get read on Tuesday. But Violet Swaggins didn't have school today, right?
Oh yeah, right. Yep.
So I had to not be a neglectful father, and
Mix it up once in a while. That's nice.
yeah, right. So I found it very hard to because I also hadn't seen her in a few days, so I
Right.
didn't want to, so we had a lot of fun today, but so I didn't get nearly as much reading as I normally
Because
do.
you're out gallivanting with William and MacTavish over there, and it's running into problems. But anyways, Wildcats was a book that I've been. Look, we got Matt Rosenberg on this title. Matt Rosenberg was the one who was writing Grifter before in Batman Urban Legends. Different artists on this series. Actually, one we're quite familiar with, Steven Segovia, who, for those who are wondering why does that name sound familiar, if you read The Scorched, which was written by a friend of the show, Sean Lewis, you're familiar with Steven Segovia's art. Now, we've seen him and other stuff too. I don't know if he's doing all the Dark Crisis stuff or some of it. But he's doing work over there. He's a busy man. I don't know how you can do that much work when you're as an artist. It's one thing when you're a writer, but he's on this title. I thought I had sky high expectations, knowing how Rosenberg wrote Grifter. We both really liked how he wrote Grifter, and I thought Rosenberg did a great job. I gave it like his work, and grading it on Geeks Worldwide, because I did review this. His work was an 8.5. And maybe it could have been a little bit higher, but there was something that was distracting me throughout the course of the story. And it wasn't Segovia's art, but the colors. And I'm blanking on the colorist's name right now, and probably just as well. Not poor work whatsoever, Joe, but it's a thing. I don't know why, but I feel like I've been more hyper aware of it, or have been hyper aware of it recently, and probably because of the title that I'm talking about today. I'll get into that more later, obviously, but with Wildcats, I want something a little bit grittier, especially with Grifter right at the center of it. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that they're almost spelt the same way. But I feel like when you're dealing with that character who's a little bit more of a deplorable, I don't want something that's too glossy necessarily. And that's kind of the vibe that I get in this first issue. Now, I'm more than willing to kind of let that go and read a few more issues because Rosenberg does a good job. He still has great command of Grifter. It's a story that has some potential to be like a fun, I don't know if it's a mini series or a macro series, but either way, we don't get a ton of Grifter in the Wildcats in general right now. So I'm happy to the colorist, generally speaking, is not going to deter me. Anyways, it's not always going to bring me in. It's not always going to deter me. But that was something that took away from the book for me. Again, the work's not done poorly. It's just the decision in how to go about the colors, whether that falls down to the editors or other decision makers or the creative team, it kind of just bothered me a little bit throughout the course of the story and over the course of probably like every page, like especially when I'm looking at Cole Cash without his grifter mask on. I'm just like, it just everything just seems too shiny, and I don't understand why that's the case. So I gave it, I think, like an 8, a little over an 8 out of 10 on Geeks Worldwide. Feel comfortable with that score because I did like it in a lot of ways, but that was something that was just a huge distraction for me.
Colors make a huge difference. They
Yeah.
they really do, and and that's the thing, because I think colorists don't get the credit they deserve, because I think they just sort of get lumped in with the artist. Like when we
Yep.
talk about art, right, and we talk about the artist, a lot of times we're talking about the inker, right, the guy, no, I shouldn't say the guy, the person,
Mm,
who does the line work, right, and a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but sometimes that person is one and the same, right? They do everything. The artist on the book also does the colors and all that. But most of the time, you have the artist, say Ryan Stegman, right? He draw, and then whoever the colorist is comes in and and gives it the life, right? Gives it that color,
mm.
and that really can make or break the art, really,
Sure.
because you could have just this gorgeous, wonderfully detailed line art, but if the color scheme doesn't fit, then it can really take away, right? And so I think it's a really understated and underrated aspect to the art when it comes to comic books. And I haven't had that experience where I've been like, oh, the color palette here really is kind of taking me out of the
Mm.
book. A lot of times when I say the art isn't my cup of tea,
It's the line art, yeah.
it's usually the line art. It's the detail. It's either too scratchy or too sketchy, or it's
Or
too,
just Mega Man.
oh yeah, the choices they make with the goddamn necks. Fuck, oh, Jesus Christ, it's terrible. But like generally, that's what what we speak of. But that's interesting. I'll have to give it a look and see if I have the same take as you or not.
Yeah, and again, like it could be expectations coming in too. Like this is what I want. And that's the other thing too, when you talk about lumping things in together, it does kind of go with Segovia's art style too. Like I feel like everything, even with Scorch, like I wouldn't call his work glossy, but when you look at that compare, or I'm sorry, the artwork in that story, because again, it's a colorist working with him there. I wouldn't call their work there glossy necessarily, but when you compare it to like what we're getting from Javier Fernandez and his colorist over in King Spawn, yeah, I would call it glossy. Like there's a pretty significant difference in the aesthetic from a colors perspective. So it's like again, I'm gonna read the second issue, and it would take a lot for me to not read the third issue too, because Matt Rosenberg is doing a great job. Segovia is a good line artist too. So it was mixed feelings. In the end, it's like an 8 out of 10. I'm gonna keep going with it.
That's solid.
Yeah, it's solid. It's a solid start, and you don't get to spend a lot of time with Grifter these days. So
No,
gotta
yeah.
take those opportunities where you can get them. But anyways, let's move over to Image. Take me through what we got there.
All right, so we have Spawn 335. We have Radiant Black 19, which
Mm,
again wanted to get to but didn't get a chance. You
some good
have
stuff there. Some really good stuff there.
Tom King's Love Everlasting, issue 4. Starhenge, book 1, The Dragon and the Boar, number 5, fix your title.
Mm,
Kaya, number 2. You have Mirka Andolfo's Unnatural Blue Blood, number 4. Two Graves, number 1. The Least We Can Do, number 3. Gospel, number 1. Soldier Stories, number 1, which we highlighted during the solicit because this is a series of stories written by veterans. So
mhm.
this is something that definitely should check out. People should check out
Yep.
because I'm sure there's going to be some very personal very emotional and gutting stories in that book. We have Three Keys, number 2, Skull Kickers,
Mm,
10th anniversary issue. And then we each have a book that we want to discuss. So since the people last heard your voice, I will go first,
fine.
because we can't have too much Friar here. The people
Sounds
will
good.
revolt.
And you got to stay on
Uh,
brand too. You first every time. Big me
yeah,
guy
damn
over
right.
here.
Yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Big me. There's a bedroom joke to be made there.
Oh yeah, sure. You can make that joke. I'm not gonna make that
Yeah,
joke.
yeah, 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 yeah. But I'm 100% committed now. Do a power bomb is going to be a TLDR issue at some point. Like,
Nice.
I've pretty much known that's going to be the case, but I just want to make sure. Now, I thought with issue 6 we were getting the end of the arc, but this we're going to get 7 in this one. So I don't know if they decided to extend the story a little bit because it's been doing well or whatnot, but
Hmm.
I was reading this book fully expecting it to come to a close. And what we get at the end of this issue was tremendous. A great little, rug getting pulled out from underneath, the main character's feet there. And a turn I never would have saw it coming, but
Really?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely tremendous. So, again, I still think the title is dumb as shit, but
Yeah.
this book is
Huh.
excellent. Can't wait to discuss it. Do a power bomb.
That's a pleasant
Definitely.
surprise, but that's
Yeah.
very strange about the seventh issue arc. Like we've seen 4 issue arcs, obviously we see 5 all the time. 6 obviously is the standard, but when you get into 7, I don't know that I mean, like, unless it's a story that is solely 7 issues, but then, like, you're probably dealing with different arc sizes, it's not just one 7-story arc, but if it's something that's gonna go like, so could you see it just stopping at 7 and then that's it?
I mean, I thought it was stopping at 6. So, I mean, it definitely said
Okay.
to be concluded. So, I
Okay, so
mean,
then it's okay, then it makes more sense. Okay.
so it just sounds like they decided, okay, like, oh, this is good. Can you make it 7, or we've got enough here? Can we have an extra issue? And they said, I don't know what the dynamic was. Maybe it was supposed to be 7 all along. I don't know, but um, yeah, I love the direction. This will be a great final issue.
Huh, okay. I'm excited to hear about it because as much as, like, you talked about it, how much you like it and everything, the first thing I think of when I see do a power bomb is change your title. Like,
Yeah,
Joe does not like it. Like, that is the first thing I always think of. So it'll be good to
like
hear a little bit.
there's another wrestling book coming out. We're all of a sudden we're getting a bunch of these really cool, like
Mhm.
gritty indie wrestling books. Like Crimson Cage is a phenomenal fucking title for a
Really good.
wrestling book, right?
Really
And
good.
the next the I can't remember the title of it. I go, that's a good fucking wrestling. Like, do a power bomb. Like, just call it
Mm.
power bomb, or there's something like
Yeah, just call it power bomb. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
yeah. But anywho, I don't get paid to make these decisions, but it's an
No.
excellent book, and I can't wait to discuss it.
Not yet, at least. But one thing I want to say before I talk about the book that I wanted to dig into more, Two Graves. I know that was a book that you want to look into. Had a very promising start, and it seems like it has like the bones. Like I'm definitely going to check out the second issue. But as it kind of went along, I was like, I'm kind of confused what's going on, and confused and not in the greatest way. So I think it's something worth giving a look because maybe, hey, maybe I read it and just wasn't in the right state of mind, and didn't take in everything that I was supposed to. Something just didn't hit me right, whatever it is. But I think there's potential, at least, even if you take it in like I did, to want to look at that second issue moving forward. But you talk about a book that to do a power bomb that you want to talk about on this show at some point. Seven Sons is a book that I'm going to want to talk about. Maybe we end up doing that at the same time because the sixth issue of that is out this week. And when I read the first issue, I was like, so first when we saw the cover art for this originally, it was like, whoa, this looks fucking weird. Like I was kind of interested in it, but for you, it was like definitely like an I'm out kind of situation.
Yeah.
I read the first issue and I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is like you're dealing with like some religious stuff, a lot of like in conspiracy theory stuff, and like and there's dystopian aspect to it too, in a different, like in like 1998 too, which is kind of cool. Everything about it I really liked. I don't want to get too much into the macro because we'll talk about it on the show at some point down the line. But for this issue specifically, this one was a particular mindfuck because,
Yeah.
and I don't like it's I can't get into it now, but I think I will in some capacity when we get to when I do it on the main line, because I think there's a certain detail that's going to be important for people to be aware of as they go from the first issue to the second issue and all the way to the sixth. So I'm very excited for the seventh issue coming out of this. But I think I think if you've been reading this title, there's been like an itch in the back of your brain, like, wait a second, like this happened a while back. Why am I like not seeing anything regarding that development earlier on in the story? You get that here, and it was
Okay.
like when it happens in the end, I was like, okay, this like now I have like it's a bit of a not a reset, but like a redirection. I don't know, but it was like an extra jolt for me for this title. Everything's been good. Like it's been no doubt a TLDR book for me since like I thought it was after the first issue was confirmed with the second. But once you get the sixth one here, it's like, okay, this is like an extra bit of life into this title for me. So
Love that. Love
yeah,
that.
very excited to talk about Seven Sons when that one wraps up, which is I believe that's coming soon. I think it's going to be 8 issues, but we look over to boom. We got a couple first issues out this week. Firefly, Keep Flying, issue 1, and then we got another book that you called dibs on. And honest to God, Joe, I thought you called dibs on it before it came out, but
Yeah.
I guess I was misremembered.
Yeah. I couldn't remember or not. But you can never be, too short these days.
This is
But
true. Yeah.
Specs number one. This is a book that
Dangerous out there.
I think, you know, I think what we're calling is the solicit. And I said, "Ooh, I highlighted this book." I said, "This one, it's boom number one. I
Mm,
definitely want to read this one."
yeah.
But Specs number one, the first thing that stood out to me was that it was Chris Sheehan on the art,
Yeah.
right? And he's the artist from the Autumnal. And so like the premise of this is, two high school kids, in the 80s, reading comic books, and they see, an ad for magic specs, like, because the comic books back in the day, instead of the ads were for random shit like this versus just sort of promoting the next books and stuff
Sure.
that are coming down the line. And so what I loved about this first issue was that you get some great characters right off the bat. It's got that 80s kind of feeling without being like either too nostalgic or too heavy-handed with the references or the pop culture references. Like, you just see there's some panels where the two main characters they're just playing Nintendo as they're talking about shit, right? And you can just see that classic Nintendo controller, and it's really cool because it's got I wouldn't say horror vibes, but I can see that it's going to go down sort of that
Huh.
mystery kind of road with maybe either some horror tropes, or like there's going to be some very subtle elements to it. I think I love Sheehan's art because it's just like it's understated, but it's perfect, right? It's just he's got a great way, I think, of capturing scenes and actions and things like that. And so the premise of it, is they order these glasses. Well, they actually don't order the glasses; they just kind of show up, and then they make wishes, and they come true. And how they start making wishes, and then sort of where they go, and it's sort of like that old trope of like you make a wish that on the front seems innocent enough, but then it's oh, the unintended consequences, like uh you don't see, like, they both wish for good grades on
Mm,
exam, and they both get the same exact grade and have all the same exact answers. The next panel, you just see them like sitting in front of the principal's office, like stuff like that. So
mm.
there's some great, like, just subtle like comedy in it, like that just kind of like makes you laugh, but then like it takes some turns and it's really good. So I read this, I go, yep, 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 right in my wheelhouse. So I can't wait to
Nice.
see where it goes. And yeah, this was an excellent book. Boom does it again.
Did you throw it up in our doc to make sure that
No,
it's
but I will. But I
okay?
will.
But yeah, Christian, like obviously the first title that we both think of when we think Christian is the Autumnal, and not that it's not a boom book, but if you haven't read that one, definitely it's something worth picking up. I know we're outside of spooky season, but That's still an awesome any time of year. It's an awesome book to read.
Yeah.
I'll fly us through this other stuff that we got, Joe, before we get to the last one that you want to highlight. So we got Dark Horse Minor Threats issue 2. Shock Shop from friend of the show Cullen Bunn issue 3 is out this week. IDW TMNT 134, TMNT Armageddon Game issue 1 is out today, this week. That's okay. Star Trek The
That's
Trill.
what comics are. I mean, that's what League of Comic Geeks said.
Okay. Star Trek The Trill issue 1, MLP Classics Reimagined,
My
Little
Little
Phil.
Pony.
Oh, it's My Little Pony.
We did this
Yeah,
already.
we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Classics Reimagined, Little Philly issue 1. I am so
The
sorry.
Phillies should have given it away as well. You know,
It should like I'm reading it like what are the Little Phillies like? Jeez.
Bryce Harper, little mini Bryce Harpers.
That's what the Astros turned him into by the end of that series. My
Yeah,
God.
yeah, fucking horse
Uh,
shit.
Unbelievable. But anyways, Dynamite Lady Hell issue 3 and Lord of the Jungle issue 1. From Titan, we got Gun Honey Blood for Blood issue 3. Awesome title. Of course, we had Charles Ardai on the show a little while back. Sherlock, A Scandal in Belgravia Part 2
Gravia.
issue 4. Belgravia?
Yeah,
Is that like an actual place?
it's Belgravia.
It's
Not
too long.
Belgravia.
I'm not questioning you on the pronunciation. I'm asking you if it's a real place.
I think it's I think it's a title of an old Sherlock Holmes book.
A Scandal in Belgravia
Yeah,
Part 2. That's too long a title. Why
damn
is
right.
Scandal in Belgravia Part 2? What? Just have it like be like issue 8 or something like that. Make it easier. Anyways, Vault Dark Interlude. We got to get you on writing the titles. Vault Dark Interlude issue 5. Skybound Dark Ride.
Yes.
Dark Ride. Okay.
Yeah,
Dark
I was exhausted when I wrote this last night.
You should have just asked me to do it. I should have volunteered, but you should have just asked me to do it. I should have done it. Dark Ride issue 2 is out this week from Skybound. We also got Skybound Presents After School issue 4. And then from Comicsology, Dudley Datsun issue 3. God, I got to get moving on that title. And then we got a book out from AWA this week, Joe. And of course, you want to talk about it.
I sure do. So we have from AWA Year Zero, Volume 0. Issue number 2, written, speaking of the autumnal, written by Daniel Kraus. And so I talked about issue 1 when it came out a month ago. Issue 2 is even better. And what's great about it is, I love how, Kraus writes, he gets horror really well, and it's again, it's layered. It's a building kind of thing. We saw that with the autumnal. And what I loved about Year Zero, Volume 1 and Year Zero, Volume 2, written originally by Ben Percy, was you had these vignettes, right, so to speak. Like there was, if Volume 1 followed, these 5 characters, then Volume 2 followed a different set of characters. So this follows the same thing. And you could read all 3 of these and think the same person wrote all 3 volumes, right? So Kraus has done a really good job at sort of using his writing style and making it mesh really well with what Percy has started and created initially. So when this comes out, in trade form, and when I inevitably reread it again and then reread Year 1, Volume 1, Year Zero, Volume 2, and kind of read them all together, I'm going to look forward to that story because it seems seamless, and it's very interesting and engaging characters that he's created here, far different from those that Percy created in Volume 1 and from what he created in Volume 2, but just as engaging, just as suspenseful. And issue 2 adds layers now to like that suspense, because at this point, if you've already read, volumes 1 and 2, what's coming down the pike, where this is all leading, but it's still creating that suspense, which I think is excellent, given that for those who've already read it, know where the outcome is. So there could be that like, oh, okay, like, yeah, we get it. Very, very different. So very good. And if you're new to this, you're gonna love sort of what's coming up next.
Yeah, that's some high praise. I mean, be able to say, like, I mean, obviously, Autumnal was a great series and everything like that, but then be able to say, like, you're going to go and take on another impressive writers title, and then be able to way to still make it all feel like it's very much the same world. Nothing has changed in that capacity. While you want to make it your own thing, being able to do that too is still like it's still a challenge in itself. It's still impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the trick. And he's doing a great job. So tremendous, 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 tremendous.
Awesome stuff. Well, as we expect from AWA, which actually, if I'm not mistaken, Joseph, you are talking about an AWA title this week.
Yeah, and I wrote a list while I was on the plane of how many AWA books I've read, and it's an astronomical number, and there's still a ton, especially in the early days of AWA, I haven't
Yeah.
read yet that I want to
Yep.
go back and check out. And so, um, so this week, I'm discussing E-Ratic from AWA Studios. This is written and drawn by Carr Andrews,
Ooh.
with colorists Brian Rebar, letters by Sal Cipriano. And so this is a book that has been on my AWA radar for a long time. It's part of the Resistance universe. It is one of the early Resistance universe books that came out, but I never got around to reading it because by the time I really started getting into the Resistance, I think E-Ratic had already sort of been in trade paperback form, and I was already going through and catching up on all this reading Resistance because I was late to reading that, and then
Sure.
Resistance Reborn, and then blah, 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 blah. But I'd always heard good things about this. And when we had Axel Alonso on the first time, which was just over a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, he was talking about the different titles, and how he sort of described Erratic was it's a book for younger readers that's got a Spider-Man flavor to it. And
Definitely.
it's exactly what it is. So I'll rip through the synopsis here real quick, and then
Before you do that, I just want to say AWA first got introduced to me, same thing. I saw the designs for Erratic, and I was like, this character looks pretty badass. Like I could give him a look. But go ahead.
for those who are watching right now, that's my background. That's the main
Our
character.
background, me guy again,
Our background,
unbelievable.
yeah. Well, you didn't read the fucking book, Nick. I did. But this cover is tremendous. This is what AWA does that I actually really love, because with Marvel and DC especially, you get 1,000 variant covers, and it's great for those artists that are getting the work. But what AWA does is like they only do variant covers for the first issue, and then generally it's the same cover artist going forward. And so this one here is done by, again, friend of the show, John Boyd Myers. He absolutely kills it. I love that cover for this book. But synopsis: you're 15 years old. You're suddenly granted incredible powers. Cool, right? There's only one problem. You can only use your powers for 10 minutes at a time. What do you do when you have to save the world, but you only have 10 minutes to do it? This is the problem faced by Oliver Leaf, a teenager who has just moved to a new town, a new school, and is having a hard enough time navigating classes and his crush before interdimensional monsters start showing up. What do you have
Speaking
for
of
dessert?
interdimensional
Oh,
monsters,
I love it, kiddo. My daughter's having pumpkin s'mores for dessert.
oh, I thought it was
So
an
I
interdimensional monster. Excuse me.
yeah. But I absolutely love that premise. So, right, this spans from the Great Death. This is the event that we've talked about many times when we've done Resistance books on this show. This is a universe that they wanted to create that was based on a pandemic level event that killed an extraordinary number of people. But a percentage of those who survived, got endowed with special powers. And the fact that his character has a special power that they can only use for 10 minutes at a time, that's fantastic. We have, I mean, when was the
Hmm.
last time, if ever, if you've seen that, where like, yeah, we've read stories where, they lose their powers, but they eventually get them back, but they always kind of have them. This is like oh shit, like I got to save this, or I got to time this just right. Because if I don't, I'm fucked. The town's
Hmm.
fucked. The world's right. That's an incredible thing. And so
Yeah.
that absolutely fascinated me. And so while this is billed as a young adult comic, it's so much more than that, right? Like, this is a book I 100% wouldn't think twice about giving to my nephew Patrick, right?
Hmm.
Like, this is a great book if you have kids that you want to introduce to comics, to superheroes, as something that's not Marvel, that's not DC, that's a little more indie. This is a great, great book to start off with, because you've got this really cool superhero. He's a kid, he's relatable, family's relatable. The situation he is, minus the pandemic and the superpowers, but like moving into a new school, kind of getting bullied, not fitting in, like that's all, very relatable. It is all very Spider-Man esque, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it is something really that anyone can read. I read this and absolutely enjoyed it. Right? There's other, like, young adult books that we've read. And I said, yep, this is great for them, not for me.
Hmm.
Looking at you, IDW, with your fucking Star Wars books. Right? The High Republic books. So, like, this is just, I think, a really great all ages book. It really is. And Oliver, he's the main character, and his, like I said, his powers are not only something that he can only use 10 minutes at a time, but like he's pretty much, he's got to recharge. He only gets to use them like pretty much once a day. So that's the other thing too, right? Because like it's not like, oh shit, power's out, I gotta wait 10 minutes before I can use it. It's boom. He's got to do
Yeah,
a
it's
full
nuts.
24-hour recharge. And so while this is very Spider-Man esque, right? You've got the teenager in high school who's now got powers. There's a love interest. It's very similar in that manner, but like with Spider-Man, he's got the whole thing with Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility. The whole thing, right? So there's a different family dynamic with Peter Parker and Spider-Man than there is with Oliver Leaf and his family. His mom kind of stinks.
Oh wow.
She's not a character that you really root for. She
Mm.
tries hard, um, but she's really doing her kids a great disservice. Now, I don't like this first volume doesn't really
Mm.
dive into her past and dive into the events that sort of lead them to where they are in this new town. And with volume 2 just started, we're 2 or 3 issues in at this point. Maybe I haven't read that yet, but maybe they get into that. I'm assuming just you know her sort of downturn came from the events of the Great Death. But she's not someone you really root for, at least early on. He's got an older brother who is just high school football jock, very popular, starts on the varsity football team. He's really good, and he's good to his brother, but he's also like, okay, we're at this party. I need you to hang out with your nerd friends, and kind of leave me alone because I'm trying to fit in with these guys over here. But I got your back, but I gave you a ride here. I'm not giving you a ride home, kind of thing. So there's this family dynamic that is wildly dysfunctional, and that's kind of some of the things that sort of set this apart, from it, just being I don't want to say it's a Spider-Man knockoff. It's not. It has a lot of the same tropes, but I like that dynamic to it, right? Where things aren't either, all rosy, or you have that sort of, because his relationship with Aunt May is really special, right? And
Sure.
his relationship with Uncle Ben, when he had, was really special. This is a lot. It's a 180 from that.
Well, that's an
Um,
improvement too, I think, in some ways, because when you look at Spider-Man 2, I was actually just thinking about this earlier today, how like everybody is always like with Spider-Man, everybody's so invested, right, in his personal life. It's like why can Peter Parker never have like things being going okay in his personal life? It's always got to be an issue, which again, like you're talking about comics and stuff like that, like there's storytelling, like that's gonna happen a lot with characters.
yeah,
Otherwise, what's the story that's there? Like they're happy living at home, like reading their books by a candlelight. Like you can't tell a story on that sort of a thing. So you already have it built in where it's like, okay, every time that like things are going wrong with this family, it makes sense.
right. And so like, it's a great dynamic. And while I think Peter Parker, is relatable to a lot of people, I think this character is maybe even a little bit more, relatable, sort of in that sense. And he has the love interest, which I'll dive into a little bit when we get into the characters here. But you know, this is this, like I said, this book sort of fits in with the Resistance universe, and I think it's a great way to get sort of younger readers sort of into that universe. The problem with the Resistance universe is that this is the only real sort of all ages, you know, kid or young reader, friendly title for the Resistance. Everything else that happens, like Resistance, Resistance Reborn, Resistance Uprising, Moths, Knighted, right?
Well,
Those are for more mature readers, right? There's
sure.
a dark,
Yep.
there's a darker tone. There's more that happens there. So it's like, yeah, I give this book to my nephew and he loves it and he wants to go and read the other Resistance books, and I have to say, I don't know, maybe like maybe if I wanted to be a cool uncle, I'd let him read it, but then his parents might be like, "What the fuck you giving my kid this to read?" Not that they're
Mm.
like over the top. It's not like I'm giving them like
Yep.
you know
They're not.
he
Yeah.
could he could read them, right? But it's like
It's not like you're a
it's
sweet paprika.
yeah, well, yeah, facts. But you know what I mean? Like there's a little bit more of like uh a jump you've got to make in terms of it, like like it fits in perfectly because of all the references to everything that happens, but like he could probably read Resistance and be fine. Like Moths takes, that is a very emotional book. That takes like that's a
Mm,
book where like if a 12-year-old reads, like it's not like it's anything that happens that's graphic or illicit, but like the emotional tone that book takes
sure.
might go over his head. You
Well,
know
and
what
there's
I
certain
mean?
certain things when you look at like Knighted too. That's another one where I think like yeah, there's emotional things that are going on with that character that
Right.
I mean maybe a kid your nephew's age might understand some of it, but they're not going to fully understand it in for sure.
Right.
He still could enjoy that title, but he's not going to get everything out of it. More than likely that you and I are getting out of it.
Right. But it's great that there's volume one, there's volume two is out now. So like you can give them this book and then maybe, if they
Yeah.
stick with it, a year or two goes by, boom, jump right in and love it. So, that was like my only like thing as I'm reading it, like, yeah, this is great, but like it's in this universe now where the other titles are definitely a little bit more mature. Tone is a lot darker, right? There's things that play more on current political events and things like that. But um overall fantastic. And the other thing that I loved about this book is Carr Andrews' art. So he writes it and draws it. And the colorist was Brian Rebart. Like the art in this book is gorgeous. It's got
Mm,
that like it does have that sort of like young adult feel to it, where the art is a little more sort of cartoony, but it
mm,
fits the tone of the book. The colors are absolutely outstanding. Like it just fits. Like
mm.
everything about this just works together. Now, you know, not just tonally but artistically too, right? The art is different than what you get in Moths, what you get in Resistance, because Mike Diodato and Carr Andrews are not the same, artists,
Right.
right? But I feel like Diodato's art, really fits that universe really well,
Yeah,
right?
100%. I
Right.
mean, but he just has a unique style in
He
himself.
does.
And by the way, when you look at, I know now getting the erratic floppies, like yeah, you can get them for volume two, and I'm sure there's some cool covers there. But if you look up erratic and look at some of the covers, if you go on Google or whatever, there are a lot of kick-ass covers for this
Yeah,
title too.
there really are. So the art's a huge bonus for this book. It's fantastic. It fits the tone. It fits everything about it. Like Carr Andrews, I think, was a really good choice to sort of give this title to, and, and
Hmm.
and let them run with it. So, just a couple of characters, real quick, that I wanted to dive into. So you have Oliver Leaf. He's the main character. He's 15 years old, and he struggles to fit in, like I said, but he's also still trying to figure out his powers. So, like those, great scene, like we see from Shazam when he's trying to figure out his powers, early on, like it's like he just sort of gives off this huge, like, sort of energy burst, right? And it just sort of, emanates from it's wild. And him still trying to figure out, what's going on. And then we sort of get introduced to this character named Doc, who is trying to help him out, trying to harness, that energy.
No,
Um,
we don't. Are you kidding me?
yeah, 100%.
The truth
100%.
comes out, burying the friggin' lead. You're like 15 minutes into talking about this book, and now we know why Joe loves this book.
Yeah.
There's a character named after
Yes,
him.
he's shifty though. He's shifty. So
Unbelievable.
we
Well,
we
it's
we
on
we
brand.
it is on brand. So we still don't know what there is about this guy, but like that was a cool aspect of this first volume is
Mm,
trying to understand like what the hell is going on. How do I control it? How do I harness it? What is exactly all of this? So as a kid, again, the tone is perfect. You got Mr. Marquez, he's the main antagonist. He's this, takes over as principal of the school, and he's sort of this weird villain. He kind of reminds me of like a character from Chew. Remember when I talked about Chew? Because
sure.
it almost kind of, mimics that art style a little bit too. So he's this kind of weird looking character, and you don't really know, like his origin, but he's trying to like run this sort of communistic conformist style to his school where he wants, everyone to fall in line, look the same. No one is greater than anyone else, sort of thing. And you get that he's got some sort of mind control powers to him, and so his like story arc is really interesting, and where it starts and where it finishes. Um, and then the other, there's a couple of other. There's another friend, Bijou. They call him Beej, which I think is hilarious. He's
Hmm.
Oliver's sort of best friend. But Kristen, that's the love interest. She's the popular girl. She's very much into getting clicks, and going viral. And a funny thing that happens with her is like there's this love-hate relationship between the two where you can tell like he's really into her and she's into him, but she's playing it like she's not because she's the popular girl and he's a dweeb. But she gets really pissed at him. I thought this was great comedy because every time she tries to video him to go viral, his powers like block. It's like an EMP, so it blocks like all video devices. She gets really pissed off at him because like she can't get that viral moment she's looking for. But they
Huh.
have a great arc and a great sort of love-hate relationship, in this first volume. So again, very Spider-Man-esque without being Spider-Man. I enjoyed it very much.
Man, when you talk about like, again, always the first thing we talk about afterwards is show or a movie. And I mean, first of all, just want to restate this. And sometimes I put my foot in my mouth when I say this. Comics are the superior medium. Medium.
Yeah.
Last time I said that to a writer, I thought, yeah, that was. I stand by what I said. It's the superior medium, and he's still the writer of the book. It doesn't matter if he's writing the movie. I'm
Yeah,
not
but he
sorry,
also
Johnny
wrote the
Cates.
script to the movie.
Yeah, not sorry, Johnny Cates. Your original work is your best work. It's a compliment to you, regardless, and it's not a condemnation of your script writing ability. There's a lot of things that play in the course of that. But um, when I hear when I hear all of this, I think you could go either way with this character. I think you have infinite potential with this character. I know AWA, they have, if I'm not mistaken, it's a movie deal that they have, right? Where there's a movie like studios that they're working with, right? Shows are not necessarily where they're going right now. Obviously, when you look at their titles by and large, it makes more sense for them to go movies because they do these limited series. But I think with the Resistance universe, you could go either way. But with Erratic, you could do live action movie, live action show. You could do animated show based on everything that you're telling me right now.
Give me an animated show for this. I think that would be
Ooh, I
tremendous.
love it even
Yeah,
more.
give me
Yeah.
like Spider-Man, like the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. Give me something like that. I think it would
Mm,
be fantastic. That would be the way to
ugh,
go. Because you could do this
nice.
as a movie, but this doesn't feel live act. Nothing about this screams live action to me. And maybe that's says something about Car Andrews' art in this, where I just think like cartoon because you could do more with it because there's a lot required of this character's superpowers and some of the powers from some of the other characters that we meet. And I think like there's unlimited potential to make like seasons of animated shows for this. That would be excellent.
Mm, yeah, I mean, and I honestly, anytime we don't say this a whole lot, but as you're talking about it, it makes me think like anytime we see a comic that we look at it and think it's probably better served in animated form, like Saga's obviously, the case in point for that too, and in Invincible, I think you like we've seen it, and I think if someone tried to say, hey, let's do this live action, like now having seen it in animated form, it just wouldn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. You'd like it would feel like too much of a knockoff of the boys, especially too, just because how violent things can get. But as much as they're very different from one another, um, I think anytime though you're getting a comic book series and it's like this is probably better served in animated form. I think the artists and did their job. Like they made it where it's like
Yeah.
you need to see it similar to this. They absolutely knocked it out of the park. So this is a lot about Carl Wilson, Carl Andrews, excuse me. About I'm getting mixed into my title now. So awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to give E-Ratic a look, and now I'm definitely gonna go and make sure I do that. Because this sounds like an outstanding title and one for everybody too. So an awesome way to get introduced into the the resistance universe over at AWA. But you got anything else for me on E-Ratic before moving to my title?
No, it's tremendous. If you haven't read it, read it.
Okay, awesome. So we go from one series with some amazing art. Of course, we got the line artist, the same person as the writer on this one. We got another one too where I talked about that I'm going to talk about today. I talked earlier about how colors were impacting me on a title in a little more of a negative way. And now I'm going to break down another title where it's also from the same company, DC Comics, but the colors impacted me in such a positive manner. It's mind blowing. And that's Poison Ivy, which this is a macro series. And I'll get to that in a second, but this is started its run in 2022. The writer on this series, G. Willow Wilson, artist Marcio Takara, colorist Arif Prianto, and letterer Hassan Osmani Alhau. The synopsis for this series: Pamela Isley has been a lot of things in her life: a living god, a supervillain, an activist, a scientist, and dead. In a new body that she didn't ask for, and with a renewed sense of purpose, Ivy leaves Gotham and sets out to complete her greatest work, a gift to the world that will heal the damage dealt to it by ending humanity. Spinning out of the pages of Batman, DC is proud to present the unbelievable next chapter in Poison Ivy's life by the incredible creative team of G. Willow Wilson and Marcio Takara. First off, if you haven't been reading Batman, whether it's during Chip's run or pre-Chip's run, yes, I do recommend obviously reading Chip's run. Joe's talked about it a lot more on here than I have. I've been behind him on it, but you don't have to have read a single page of either one to be able to appreciate what's going on with Poison Ivy. You also don't need to have this overwhelming background on the character. Look, we all know who Poison Ivy is. If you know that she's always had her issues with humanity, and in some ways it's like kind of an anti-hero as much as she may generally feel more like a villain. As long as you have all of that, and her relationship with Harley Quinn too, which not that Harley Quinn's throughout this title, those are just all things that are important to know. Once you know that, you've heard it here as a refresher or whatever, you're good. This is primarily centered around Ivy. Like you see, obviously, there's other people that she has to deal with in the course of it, but when we're talking about DC legacy characters, we see like someone pop up in like a hallucination. We see somebody else, pop up a little bit later on in the story, and that character is probably going to be part of the mix in the second arc of this, because we've only gotten 6 issues of this Poison Ivy title, and it was originally only supposed to be, Joe, 6 issues, but it had such a massive amount of success. I don't know if it was the first issue or the second issue, maybe it was even after the third. They decided they were going to turn this into a macro series. So this is going to be a 12-issue series, but I couldn't wait to talk about this one any longer. After the 6th issue, yeah, like you couldn't have ended it right at that 6th issue, but I'm sure they adjusted midway, as they decided to turn this into a macro series. But they did like right now it makes perfect sense where they put things, like where they ended this first arc for this title. But as I mentioned before, like I will talk about the line art and the color art, but I mean the writing of this. But Arif Prianto, I don't know, Joe, if there's an Eisner for a colorist, and I should know that. I should have looked it up before all this too. I forget, but I'm pretty sure there is an Eisner for color artwork. Arif Prianto absolutely deserves that for this title. Like to me, of all the stuff we've seen this year, yes, like we get Tamara Bonville, and obviously does amazing work over with Once and Future, and there's other work too as well that Tamara does. But that's the one that jumps to mind, for me first. Then Jordi Belair, one of the best in the business as well. Anytime Jordi does stuff, it has a huge impact on the series. I've cited that before, I think with Cy Spurrier's Hellblazer run. Did you confirm if there is a Eisner?
There is. The Eisner Award for Best Coloring is an award for creative achievement in American comic books, and it's awarded to the colorist.
Yep. Okay. There we go. So Arif Prianto should absolutely win this, like 100%. So as much as those are two colors that we cite primarily on this show, probably more than anybody. Tamara Bonvillain and Jordi Belair. Arif Prianto, not familiar with Arif Prianto's work prior to this series. Instantly, like what, like to me, one of the best colors here. Now, if you're watching the show, I do have one of the Poison Ivy covers. I believe, I don't remember which title. Actually, Joe, you were the one that pulled this. Which issue is this cover for? Do you know off the top of
Issue
your head?
one.
Issue one. Okay, this is the Dan Mora cover, and there have been a ton of awesome covers for this one too. I was looking at some from issue 6, and there's a lot of awesome work. You're bringing some of the best people here. Of course, Dan Mora, one of the best artists in the business. Never mind cover artists, but with Prianto, Mauricio Takara's art is like, it does a great job with the line work. But I've never it's there's not many times that you can say, and I don't know if I can think of another time where the color art consumes the line art to where that's what I'm thinking of first when I think of this title. Like, I'm not kidding, Joe. When Poison Ivy came out, I was like, I cannot wait to see what the colors do with this. Like, I cannot wait to see how crazy things get, because there's a virus that's mixed in all of this that Poison Ivy's got going on. And the way, like, yes, don't get me wrong, like Takara is the one that's got to be drawing everything there, but the way that Prianto is able to amplify every ounce of it. It is just, it fits Poison Ivy as a character. It fits, like, like a plant type virus kind of thing that we got going on. Totally makes sense for it. And it's just like those are the images that stick with you afterwards. And as much as we talk about how important colors can be, I know you're saying it before when we were talking about how Wildcats was a little bit of a detractor. I cannot recall another time where it had this much of an impact on me, where like this is the number one thing for me with this title. Definitely enhances. We've talked about that at nauseum before, not nauseum, but plenty of times. This is some next level shit though with the color. So you've never had an example of that, right? That you can think of off the top of your head.
No, but I mean, like I said before, like colorists, like they make or break. They really do. Like, I shouldn't say make or break, but they really do add, uh, that life right to the art. I'm looking at Eisner Award for colorists. Matt Hollingsworth won for Preacher.
Oh yeah, yep.
And a few other things. Dave Stewart leads the pack with 10
Mm,
Eisners. Jordi Belair has 2. Laura Allred is the most recent winner, at least
mm,
according to Wikipedia, for 2021. So I
mm.
don't know why this isn't updated, but for X-Ray Robot, Bowie, Stardust, Ray Guns, and Moon Age Daydreams. But like, yeah, there's like Dave Stewart, Chris Ware, Laura Allred. Those are the ones that sort of, like, lead the charge. Jordi Belair, right?
I'm surprised Tamara
So
Bonvillain hasn't won, because when we think of, like, as much as Dan Moore absolutely kicks ass from a line art perspective, when you look at when we talk about Once and Future, like Tamara Bonvillain's like colors, like really just everything
yeah,
pops next level
yeah,
with Dan Moore's artwork. But now I will say, when it comes to colors, like, yes, it can go and be awesome and everything, but that only is going to mean so much when you have a line artist that you don't necessarily care for their work quite as much. Mercy Takara does awesome stuff with Poison Ivy. And then also, again, like, if the story's not good, sometimes that can carry, like, art can carry the story and you can be fine for a certain period of time. Some people you can't carry at all, but you have G. Willow Wilson, who has like a full understanding of this character. But if she didn't, like, then I don't know how much I'd necessarily care about Earth Prianto's color work in this series. So just things that are like important to note, where I'm, as much as I'm giving Prianto all this praise, those two did an outstanding job throughout the course of the series. And I will say too, when it comes to the letters, Hassan Ostame El Hal, like, has to do a lot of different work too with Poison Ivy. I don't want to get into exactly the details behind that, because that is a little bit spoilery. But there's a lot of different work that he has to do there. But for those who, like, I don't know how many people watch Harley Quinn animated series, but I gotta assume there's more people watching that than necessarily reading Poison Ivy. But if you're watching that show and it's like, oh, Poison Ivy, there's a title going on right now, or you see the first half of the series come out in trade form, let's say, and you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna get this version of Poison Ivy, forgetting the voice actor for that series. They do a great job with her in that show, but there's difference Like there's similarities and important similarities where again, like knowing the character and having an understanding of what makes her tick, what makes her move, what motivates her. That's all there with this character, but there are differences. Like, I think it's Sky Bell. That's the voice actress, but there's like a certain um way to that character in the course of the animated series that I like that is different to Poison Ivy there. In general, you don't get that here. So just if you watch the show and you love her there and like kind of like the side comments that she'll mumble to herself and all those things, you're not getting that kind of comedy necessarily here. This is more like Poison Ivy, who's motivated, who's out here like cashing checks and breaking necks, and she's not fucking around. So, and look, in the synopsis, you heard it, like it's all about her issues with humanity. There is a whole thing that she goes through throughout the course of this first arc too that I cannot wait to see how it unfolds in the second arc. And it's just like it's because she's got her own shit going on internally, and then how that kind of transpires externally, and the development of that over the course of the arc is some awesome stuff too. I mean, again, I'm talking all about the artwork, but the story here is also what keeps me coming back. So I cannot wait for the second arc of this. I'll be checking in on that throughout the course of it all and what's new. But this first arc alone, like it's awesome stuff. To have this be a mini series and get turned into a macro series should be enough. Like I shouldn't need to tell you guys much more than that. That is huge, especially when we're talking about one of the big two. Because as much as it's a challenge to do that with the indie titles, I'm sure indie creators, like when you're doing that, when it's a creator-owned project, you have an idea. Like I could go further. We heard it with Declan Shelby, right? Like he has like, oh, if it's only going to go 2 arcs, I can go this far. Or if it's 3, or if it's more, I can do this, that, and whatever. But for DC and Marvel, like you got to be like impressing a lot of different people and bringing in quite a bit of dough for that to happen. So says a lot about this one. I would love to see more of Poison Ivy with this creative team beyond the macro series, but right now I'm content with what we're getting. But if they knock it out of the park in that second arc too, then give me more from G. Willow Wilson and this team for sure.
No, it sounds fantastic. One thing that drives me fucking bonkers. Fucking macro series, maxi series, mini series. Here's an
Yeah.
idea, dipshits. Limited series. It's a 12-issue limited series. Boom.
Yeah.
Keep
Oh,
it fucking simple.
the term you don't. I don't blame you.
Yeah, maxi series, because DC calls it a maxi series,
Is
right?
that what it is? Yeah, you're right.
It's
Yeah.
a macro series. Oh, well, I just picture a bunch of fucking dumb suits. Oh, well, macro series. No, that's chicken. We'll call it a maxi series. Yeah, that's it. It's a fucking 12-issue limited series. It's not fucking difficult.
Nope.
Shorten up your titles, come up with better names, right? And just,
I was gonna slide that in.
just call it a fucking limited 12-issue limited series.
I agree.
Right?
And I think I actually made up
Ongoing or limited.
Yeah.
Right? It's simple. Ongoing, limited. Boom, boom. Done. Simple.
Yep. I'm pretty sure I made up macro series now that you're reminding me maxi series. So there's that.
Even
so
still,
maxi series I'm part of the problem.
Dumb. It's dumb. Makes you think of, maxi pads. No, terrible word. Get it out of there. Doesn't need it. It's a fucking limited series.
Let the creatives create and do their thing and let them make up these terms, because Lord knows the people who are in charge of this are not the creatives. But
hire me, let me do it. I'll fucking tell you how it is.
Exactly. What are you going to do then? If you don't want to call it a maxi series, you're going to
a limited series.
Yes. Sorry.
Simple. Boom.
See, this is why I can't do this stuff. That's why you got to do it. But as much as this is a mainline episode, we are not doing a failed superheroes club because we are going a little bit long for one of our mainline episodes. But at some point, we'll mix one in. I think with one of those special episodes that we got planned for the month of December, we'll have to mix one in because it may or may not involve a friend of the show. See what they say when we dig into the failed superheroes club. But that is a conversation for another day, Joseph. Again, make sure you keep your peepers popped. Subscribe to the audio channels because there's certain content that you can only get on the audio channels. Leave a 5-star review if you like us. If you don't, kick rocks, please. Subscribe to the show. And Joe, I think that's everything. Until next week, stay sexy.
You know it.